let's say, donor assistance in that are part of this this list. How to sort of ease our way into that and make the links with international companies. It is important to do this, to have these strategic alliances, I feel.
Excellent.
To get to the global market.
Completely understand.
And let me add to that, it should go towards doing projects with companies that are not starting from beyond CSR. It's not just, it's doing real business that the other companies sees the benefit, the American or European company sees the benefit from, taking it beyond the Ciscos, the HPs and so on. So that's, I mean, that's not an easy thing, but I agree that if there is facilitation and money can be spent on such programs, yeah, great, but it should be beyond like, okay, let's take the money to America and just show them to the big companies. I mean, it needs a real...
it's more than that.
Yeah.
It's more than that.
Others?
I think as startups here, we are seeking to build more relations and connections with the huge companies, as the guys here mentioned. But what the effect of having a venture capital firm like T2VC, Benchmark Capital, Exor, that stuff, on the brand effect of the startup? For example, when Benchmark Capital invested in Quora.com, 12 million initial investment, this grabbed more attention about their service, and the CB will affect their spread on the world. So how you value the opportunity for a venture capital firm to join a startup and the effect of building the brand awareness of its services?
That's a good thing. Any others? Or we can start with that?
Let's go on.
We have quite a few. So we will start with this, and then we'll kind of jump around. I've got another presentation. It's more focused on sales. This is more on markets. You know, how do you think about, how do you begin thinking globally in terms about taking your products outside of a regional market? What do you need to know, and what do you need to do today to begin positioning yourself? Because most products have two strategies: a regional strategy and a global strategy. But because in the technology space and what we call high impact space, companies have the potential to go global from the day they're conceived. It's different than a lot of businesses that have high physical requirements. You know, if you're building restaurants or you're building manufacturing facilities that are very physically restrictive, that kind of limits your ability to grow. But if your product or service is knowledge-based, creatively based, companies like software, social media, mobile, they can go viral. And so you have to think about them fundamentally differently. And the last one that was mentioned was interesting, you know, about how a venture capitalist can help you brand. It's interesting. I was having a conversation with a very well-known venture capitalist in the Silicon Valley, and he said part of the reason that they've been so successful, and they continue to be so successful, there's something we observe in the Silicon Valley amongst venture capitalists, and it's a term called serial persistence. What that means is that in most industries, as most industries mature, particularly as they get, there's usually a peaking point in many industries around 20 years. So when they get about 20 years old, what ends up happening is they become mature. Industries begin flattening out, and new industries begin forming, but new people come into the markets and begin displacing the people who've been there a while. In the venture capital industry, we don't see that. We see the same people at the top are still at the top. You go, why is that when most industries have this kind of more dynamic interplay? This doesn't. And the reason is because venture capital is an apprenticeship business. You learn from the person who taught you, and so it keeps kind of building on itself. And because of that, the top venture firms have the ability to influence the markets. We call it warping gravity. They can actually change the physical laws that are out there. there. So if you have, there's a very famous venture capitalist who's named Vinod Khosla, one of the founders of Sun Microsystems. And he's with Kleiner Perkins. But when Vinod gets out there and on the press and makes a statement, it becomes real, regardless of whether it's real or not. They can go on a television show and say, we think this is the greatest next product and this is going to change the way you do something. And believe it or not, it is, just because he said so. So you do have that ability, and that's one of the things of value that venture capitalists can bring to you, is the ability to influence markets. And you can't underestimate that. Of course, you have to do your homework, because there's very few people who can do that, but the people at the top of their game have the ability. As you said, Benchmark is one of them. If just the minute someone sees that Benchmark is associated with you, you're instantly credible. You're a real business. And because in their minds, Benchmark's not going to let you fail. They're going to do everything they can. So those kinds of things are important. This is just I usually do this when I teach, just to kind of help keep track. And of course, we can jump around. The market's very different today. It's different than it was. 25 years ago in San Diego, which is where I'm from, we started businesses. Businesses were very personally related. You sold and you bought from other people you knew. And it was very trusted in our family business. It was a complete relationship business. And what was interesting is the internet, a big part of the reason that there was this whole .com implosion was because a lot of the new businesses that were set up on the internet were what we call disintermediation models. They were models where we have someone with a product here and we've got a customer here, and we're saying, gosh, if we put it up on the web, why do we need all these other people in between? We can cut all those people out, take the dollars that we would have spent on those people, and sell the product for less, and create this dynamic model. What people didn't count on is that there's a lot of relationships in there that are actually worth something. That we go into Nordstrom, well, in the US we have that, but we go into department stores, we go into places where we buy things, and we go there because we know the people, we trust them. And there's a lot of value. We trust their opinions, and we trust their ability to do business. We also find that because of that, and we're doing more and more of our lives on the web through these social networks, is that it's about building trust. And that's what a lot of these social networks allow people to do. In addition, in a lot of ways the world is, we say bipolar, it's schizophrenic. At one end of the world, you've got this mass global market that's kind of a one-size-fits-all. You can get anything you want. Google is up there. Twitter's up there, where it's a tool and things that anybody in the world can use, Apples and iPads. At the other end of the world, you have these very highly differentiated markets. These could be certain types of social networks around, medieval art, or around people with certain diseases that can come together and identify one another. And both are relatively important, and both are markets for your customers. So it's not one or the other. We're just seeing a new kind of duality in the market that the internet has allowed for us. And so what we're really seeking to do is build a relationship with the customer using these kind of new tools. The reason you're here is because you're entrepreneurs. What we find in entrepreneurs is that they have an ability to absorb a lot of bad news. They tend to be risk tolerant. They be willing to assume a certain amount of risk. But you're also fine with a lot of ambiguity. You're fine with not having all the answers to everything. And you're fine with, not always having everything understood or predetermined. One of the most important qualities for a venture capitalist is to be able to make quick decisions with imperfect or lack of information. You have to just make decisions based on what you may not have, realizing that it may not be perfect or may even be wrong, but what we know we can do is highly adapt. And the same thing with your businesses. As you create these market strategies, they're not going to be perfect, but what you learn from them and how you adapt. And one of the case studies that I'll talk about is I don't know how well understood a company like Craigslist is here, over here.
It is.
Craigslist.
It is, but it's not very used.
It's not very used. In the US, what's interesting about it is if you actually go to Craigslist on the web, very simple website, it's really just text.
Craig, could you give a perspective about Craigslist? What is it exactly? Because not all of them understand what it is.
Absolutely. In fact, I can actually show it. Just because it's worth it to understand as a business and a marketing, how people kind of marketed this. Wait a second for us to find. Here we go. It'll be interesting to see which Craigslist happens to pop up. But we're going to play Russian roulette here. Craigs with a plural.
San Diego.
Brings up San Diego.
San Diego.
So what it is, it's basically like a, you can see it's just kind of a very simple thing. You can look and purchase, pretty much purchase anything. You can basically, find friends under personal, but what people use it mainly for is to buy and sell things and to find apartments. Let me just shut this down so I just cover it up with my reminders. Shut these down too. There we go. But you can pretty much buy anything you want on the web. And we can just look at cell phones. And they've got discussion forums.
There is a Craigslist Palestine.
Is what?
There is a Craigslist for Palestine.
I imagine there.
Yeah.
There is. So when Craig Newmark started this, and he's been offered a lot of money for this. Well, look how simple the text is. I mean, it's like the simplest of websites. And this has been around a while. In fact, this was one of the first truly global social websites. Craig Newmark is an entrepreneur who, when he set this up, what made him different is that he answered every email that came in from his users. And so as he set it up, his users came back and said, we don't like this, we like this, change this. And he highly adapted it and became the most used. This is before eBay, this is before Google, and it's still around and it's still used as a primary source of people connecting to one another, particularly for bartering and sales of goods. And the reason I mention this is because there was something that he used in his marketing called embedded observation, which is he felt that in order to serve his customers well, he felt he had to be in the middle of the conversation with his customers. So he did create a product, put it on the market, and let others kind of manage it for him. He felt that the market had to be around him, and he was constantly listening to the emails. Larry and Sergey were actually doing the same thing when they first started Google. They can't do it now. But all the emails that were coming in about, your product sucks, it doesn't do this, or every time I put in this kind of search, this comes up. And Craigslist, people would be standing like the same people would keep posting and posting, and there'd be too many of their posts. And so he listened and he created a way for Craig filtering the spam on that. Then it turned out that this site was used inappropriately for a lot of people, putting up inappropriate content for it. And so he immediately jumped in and was able to change it. Again, the reason this is important is because of that embedded observation. Whenever you have a product that you are going to take global, it's important for you to stay connected to the customer in any way you can.